The crops are harvested. The neighboring woods are naked with their fallen foliage resting on the forest bed. It's late fall, and most everyone's beginning to tuck themselves away for a cozy winter. It's also the time of year when sportsmen and sportswomen take to those same fields and woods to hunt white-tailed deer. For many hunters, it's not about just killing an animal, but connecting with the world around us. Stocking our freezers, taking that elusive trophy buck. For others, hunting as a higher calling.
Well, surprisingly, Mid-Ohio Food Bank reports that the food that they give to their partners around Central Ohio is enough for 76,000 meals a day. When you think about those numbers, it really blows you away. That's not just Knox County, that's the entire Mid-Ohio Food Bank region. So we know for a fact that hunger is prevalent, that the demand and the need continues to be there, and it continues to stay pretty steady, and even in this current recession has grown.
Crop and property damage have become a reality that those of us in rural areas are all too familiar with. Now deer are even thriving in more urban settings. Many farmers and other agricultural agencies are able to obtain damage permits or licenses to shoot deer to reduce their profit loss from overpopulation. While there was little regard to the discarded deer in the early years of damage permits, something changed in 1997. Rick Wilson recounts an incident that changed his life and the lives of many others since one September day in Virginia.
One day I was driving down Virginia Highway to the place that we hunt, and it was early in the morning and I was running a little late as usual when I looked alongside of Route 522 and saw a lady with the trunk up on her car. I was tempted just to shoot right on by, but I didn't. I pulled over to see if she was broken down or whatever, and she said, "No, I'm not broken down, but I'd appreciate it if you'd follow me over here into these bushes." She pointed a little 6-point buck laying down there, said, "Would you help me load that up in my trunk?" She says, "Me and my kids is hungry." And I knew right then I had to do something about it. So I went to my wife and I said, there's no reason for people to be feeding their, especially single mothers, feeding their families off roadkills. I said, we've got to do something about that. Farmers and Hunters Feeding the Hungry is an outreach ministry of hunters and farmers donating their time and money to feed the hungry. Basically, they donate extra deer that they've taken to inspected, licensed meat processors, and we pay for the processing, we pay for all the processing, and then food banks and churches and Salvation Armies all over the country pick it up and feed it to the needy people in their communities.
Rick Wilson and his wife are wonderful people. They're very religious people. They've came here to visit my husband and I about 5 years ago. We met them. I'm just passionate about the program.
Last year we started Farmers and Hunters, that way they can donate unwanted deer. And the organization pays for it, so all you gotta do is just drop it off, sign it over to FHFH, and that's all you gotta do.
This is a people thing, and God challenges us, and He requires us to be responsible and to care for each other. So that's why I think having these other sources of food is extremely important for us.
We serve about 1,000 families a month at Last Call Ministries, which is in Newark, and they love the deer burger.
We have a hot meal every Thursday night, and we serve around 120 people. All people here from the communities, and most of them show up every week.
If you go to Mid-Ohio Food Bank's website, one of the stats that really literally jumps off their website at you is that over a year's time, 57% of the clients they serve have had to choose between food and paying an electrical bill. And then 43% of their clients have had to choose between food and shelter. Those are staggering numbers, and those are tough decisions that we need to be able to respond to. And Knox County's Food for the Hungry Drive is a great way for us to be able to do that.
And anything that we can do goes a long way, whether it's food pantry or hot meal. And I think the sense of community that's built here with hot meal is something that just a food pantry can't get. So that's also really cool to see.
Hot meals programs and soup kitchens are more than a free meal, and the food served and consumed at these programs goes beyond nutritional sustenance.
And it makes good meals, taking your kids. It's like taking your kids for a treat.
Very helpful. I'm retired, I'm limited income, and it's helpful to have the free meals Plus, it's helpful to get out and socialize a little bit. Many of us are pretty much homebound. I don't have a car, so I don't get to go very many places. So I really enjoy these meals and as well as use them.
So how important are these friends to you here then in your life?
They love me.
And you love them back?
Yeah. I
We're
pick
like
on them.
family, actually. We're very much like family.
This place here has a women's group at 9. It starts at 7 after your free meal here.
What do you guys talk about?
We do different things. We made a snowman for the one nursing home. I think they're decorated on the table.
I was at a workshop not too long ago and they were talking about livestock and they were giving us some examples and asked us if we could identify the species that had virtually no management practices, provided no extra amenities, whether it was shelter or extra food or water or anything like that, could breed in its first year of life, produce 1.2 offspring that first year, and every year thereafter have 2 to 3 babies and survive and increase their population almost double every year. And it was kind of a leading question, but it was the deer.
Here in Knox County, the Division of Wildlife has flown in the last couple of years in a specific time over a specific area, and they have recorded in those 1 mile squares of having in excess of 100 deer per square mile.
And so they're sustainable because we have the environment for them to live. And really if you look at the last 50 or so years in central Ohio and the farming practices, we've actually increased the carrying capacity of an environment to carry white-tailed deer.
I like going out. I love harvesting animals, but honestly, if I shoot 5 or 6 deer a year, we're not gonna eat 5 or 6 deer. But I always have friends, family, people that can use the meat. I'll take it out, get it processed, and I'll give it to them. Now with this Hunters for the Hungry program, now if I don't have a place to take it to a friend or a family, now I know that meat can be put to good use.
We're probably going to see how much we can get out during distribution first. Get as much as we can out that day, and then after that, sky's the limit as far as giving them in the food baskets after that once January hits, as well as the hot meal program.
You're cooking then. You're cooking it.
Yep.
All right.
It's all a part of this this whole stewardship, idea that we should be using anyway. But if you're going to hunt something, you may as well eat it. And so if that person's not going to eat it, somebody should. So it doesn't go to waste.
I give to Delaware, to Knox, to Licking.
I think last year Linda gave us about 500 pounds of ground deer meat. We filled a freezer full, and between January and March it was gone.
I've given to the Salvation Army in Mount Vernon, the Salvation Army in Newark. I've given to the Utica Food Pantry. I give to churches in Westerville. I gave to Danville. I gave to Centerburg. Any organization that needs meat to feed the hungry.
Yeah, last year we donated about 700 pounds to the interchurch, and this year we're up to about 400 pounds so far.
It is a sustainable food source for us. The biggest thing about the selective harvest that we do is this ensures that we have animals year after year on our farms. We're not wiping out an entire herd. We're going to come back each year, we're going to enjoy the sport, we're going to have good times outdoors, we're going to be able to hunt and harvest big healthy animals.
What you've got is you've got an environment that has all that food source there. We've increased their nutritional planes so high that does have triplets on a regular basis, and then they raise them. And yet we still struggle in some of the sheep breeds that have been managed and domesticated for how long that don't even have 2 lambs per year, and we're giving them the best of care. And so you have a wild animal that has really adapted to the environment that we've created for them, and they're just thriving. And so that actually, as long as we maintain this type of environment, the fragmented environment, we'll have a large carrying capacity and large population of deer.
There's no natural predators to control the deer population in the state of Ohio, so we use hunters to help reduce numbers to make things so that the carrying capacity is of an equal balance in nature. Without that, the deer would eat us out of house and home.
Deer is a renewable resource in as much as they reproduce. They're doing a pretty good job of that. And by the same token, we have plenty of food, plenty of grain. Our agricultural benefits the deer population. Even though if we do not have the harvest method, however that be, then our populations would get out of control.
If man doesn't step in and manage these herds, what's going to happen is Mother Nature is going to take over and she's going to manage the herds for us. That can be done through disease, starvation, or other means. The biggest thing about when we harvest animals is we make sure that we leave the best genetics out in the herd, so that way that the animals that are healthy and the genes you want passed on are going to be reproduced and carried on down the bloodlines.
High populations of deer in an area, farmer plants a field and they're coming in, whether it's soybeans or whether it's corn, and they can reduce yields 25, 30%. And in today's market price where you've got $17 to $18 a bushel soybeans, and you've got $8 to $7 to $9 a bushel of corn, depending on the day and where we're at, you know, you multiply that by acres. It adds up pretty quick where there can be some significant damage.
Proper herd management is helping to prevent crop damage, and it's feeding people who are hungry. It's a win-win. The state and local law enforcement are also helping out in other creative ways.
Years ago when I was in college, I was on what was called the deer kill list. It has nothing to do with hunting, but what it is if there's a motor vehicle accident and there's a deer that is hit and killed by a car, that they will give you a phone call at home and ask you if you'd like to eat the deer. Most of the time I've gone out and I've taken the deer when they've called.
Well, I had we had a client just a couple of weeks ago that hit a deer on Route 3 and was really shook up about it, and they called and, you know, what do we do? And so we got the claim going, and I said, well, did you see where the deer's at? And they said, yeah, I believe it's still in the middle of Route 3. So I called the Highway Patrol Department to let them know, and they said that they had already got a couple of calls from, you know, drivers passing by that was there, and so they had already dispatched someone out. But
when harvest is happening and the fields are starting to clear, the deer population seems to move quite a bit more, either from feeding or, you know, hunting and so forth.
In fact, more than 18% of all deer vehicle collisions take place in the month of November, which is about 3 times more likely in November than any other month between the months of February and August.
And then there's their natural migration paths and so forth that we hear about through the Ohio Department of Natural Resources. So we're aware of different deer crossings in our areas. So we know that we're going to start experiencing some deer crashes, car versus deer, or commercial vehicles versus deer, motorcycles versus deer, and so forth.
The chances of an Ohio motorist striking a deer are 1 in 118, which actually has come up over the past year. About a year ago, that was 1 in 127.
And we had an occasion when I was a young troop in Stark County. There was a family that came out to the scene of a crash. A lady did not want the deer, and I told her it was her option if she wanted to give the deer away. And we called somebody on the list, and it happened to be a family that was in dire need of you know, a deer to feed their family. And a young mother came out with her 3 children, and I helped her load this huge buck deer into the back of a compact car, and we, you know, pushed the trunk down and tied it down, and she took it home. I later heard from her husband, who had been out of work for quite some time, and he had just picked up a few hours at work to help keep the family going, and he thanked me to no end about, you know, getting them this deer. And, you know, it was just all because they were on this deer list that got called out to the scene.
Part of the problem here in Knox County, as in many states, in fact, Franklin County, Columbus, Ohio, is a real problem, is the roadkill. People driving down the road and hitting a deer, doing a tremendous amount of economical damage to their vehicles, to their purse, to the insurance companies. That all takes its toll.
The average property cost over those claims is about $3,305 per claim, which is up a little bit from the prior year. It's up about 4.5% from where it was just a year ago. So as cost with repairs and things increase, so does the cost of those claims over the past year.
From 2007 to 2012, Richland County has been the #1 deer-related crash county with over 3,300 crashes. Then next is Stark County with about 3,100 plus, and then it goes to Hamilton County, then back up to Summit County, and then across to Cuyahoga, oddly enough, Cuyahoga County with Cleveland area, but they have the Metro Parks areas in in that county, and then over towards Williams County.
Insurers don't normally single out deer vehicle collision claims in determining future premium adjustments. Such a collision alone really doesn't affect the premium, but it, in combination with other factors, could be an overall determining factor in adjustments with your car premium.
In the case, if the deer became greater than the carrying capacity, and in the case of Mother Nature controlling the deer population, there wouldn't be enough food for the deer to eat and they would suffer through starvation, or there wouldn't be enough places for them to live safely, and you'd see more deer vehicle accidents and things like that.
So if we can manage the wildlife, harvest it, use it for a good use, as opposed to it being wasted, that was the intent of the Division of Wildlife.
People think just because it got hit by a car that it's going to taste funny. I got news for you. It tastes just like regular deer meat. It doesn't look quite the same sometimes, but you know, when you're hungry, and it'll feed you, and it'll feed families. So it's a great thing, and it's you don't see it laying on the side of the road bloated in the hot sun.
You might be thinking, ew, roadkill, really? When you're hungry, sometimes you just can't be choosy. But venison, however it's harvested, offers many nutritional benefits that other red meat doesn't.
Venison really is a excellent, nutritious alternative to red meat, you know, whether it's beef or pork. When you look at the protein content, when you compare the protein content per, let's say, 3.5 ounce serving to beef, pork, and venison, they all are about the same. So in a 3.5 ounce serving of beef, venison, and pork, you're going to get about 22% of the calories from protein. Now when you look at calories, venison actually is a little bit lower. In a 3.5 ounce serving of venison, you have approximately 140 calories, whereas in beef, you're going to get up to almost 200 calories. So pretty comparable, but venison is a little bit lower. Pork would be about the same as beef. The difference that stands out was the fat content. Venison is actually very low in fat. So a 3.5 ounce serving of venison has only about 1.6% of the calories from fat, whereas beef, it's over 6% fat.
As far as calling deer meat or deer organic, I guess it depends on the definition you use, but they're not too picky of which fields. They don't go around and look for the certified organic farms. They're just going whatever's closest to them and looks good. So they're taking the closest meal to them, and so it's hard to say, well, most of the farms around here are not organic, and so they're eating in those fields that have non-organic food, and so they're consuming that. So I don't think there's ever a way you can say it's a certified organic meat, but as far as natural, not having things done to it, no management practices imposed on it, like confinement and vaccinations and things like that, yes, then you can go that and say it's naturally grown, but not organically grown.
But you can certainly call venison hormone and chemical free when you compare that to beef. You know, it's out in the wild.
Costs associated with the processing depends on if you do it yourself or if you take it to a processor. If you take it to a processor, they charge you for on a per pound basis. And so you take in a deer and you're gonna roughly get, depending on the size of the deer, 50 to 80 pounds of meat, because you have production costs included with the livestock, where you don't have production costs with wildlife. So it is much different, can be significantly less.
Cost you $450 to $500 to get a beef butcher, but bear in mind, a beef is 10 times as much as a deer. I charge $50 to do a deer for FHFH, but it's 50 cents a pound to process a beef and $50 to slaughter. I can process, it costs the price of about 3 times as much to process a hog as a deer.
So you can substitute any recipe that calls for ground beef with ground venison and not have to worry about changing the preparation method or the cooking method. And you really can't taste the difference. Tastes exactly the same if you want to use it in spaghetti or lasagna, tacos, sloppy joes. You prepare it the same way you would prepare ground beef. And it's extremely comparable in taste. but yet again, you're getting better nutritional value.
I enjoy the steaks. A nice tenderloin steak and you grill it.
My favorite is to cold pack the deer and open it up a pint at a time and have deer and make gravy over it.
Hamburgers and meatloaf are the best recipes.
Everybody seems to have their own special recipe for it, so ask the neighbor. Just that simple.
While we're able to participate in programs like Farmers and Hunters for the Hungry, the hunting industry offers a significant contribution to our economy.
Not only do Ohioans benefit from the sale of the hunting and fishing licenses in the state of Ohio, people from out of state come and just hunt Ohio for deer. They look forward to that every year, and that's money from out of state being spent here in Ohio. That's not money generated here in Ohio. It's brought in from Florida and Georgia and all of these other places. We get people visiting from Michigan.
And we've realized it right here in Knox County, the center part of the state, from out-of-state hunters in particular, because when they come in, they have to stay somewhere normally. That's lodging. They're going to have to eat. That's going to the restaurants. If they need equipment and such, we do have a couple sporting goods stores in the county. They're going to take advantage of that.
They're spending a lot of money in the state of Ohio. It helps our economy greatly.
According to a 2006 U.S. Fish and Wildlife study, Ohio ranks 6th nationally in annual hunting-related retail sales and 4th in the number of related jobs. Each year, hunting has a $1.5 billion economic impact in Ohio, and hunting-related retail sales in Ohio total over $700 million.
Not only does the sale of hunting and fishing licenses help with the Division of Wildlife for management purposes of our deer herd, it also, that money goes back into educational programs that we go out to schools and do outreach programs where we're trying to teach students about the different wildlife diversity that we have in the state. And not only is it just game animals that benefit by these students learning this knowledge, we talk about diverse animals such as peregrine falcons, bald eagles, things like that. And anybody that buys hunting and fishing licenses, all that money goes back into our general fund that helps our educational programs.
Hunting has played a major role in our society and our culture. I mean, you look at when we first came, from the very, very beginning, they relied on being able to find game in the woods to survive the winter.
And it's vitally important that we, the good Lord put us on this earth to take care of the vital resources that we have. And, if we have it available and it's abundant to us, which it is, and we have a way of filtering it to those who need it, man, that's just a great movement. It's a great organization.
If you think about Knox County, which has just about 61,000 people, the fact that there were over 65,000 food assistance requests last year, those are pretty significant numbers. And then when you think about the impact it has on kids, children from ages 0 to 17 make up almost 30% of the food assistance requests, or they're represented in 30% of those food assistance requests in Knox County alone. And then if you take those numbers to a regional level, as far as kids, that number goes up to about 34% of the requests at food pantries are impacting children from the ages of 0 to 17. So those are big numbers. Those are things that make you stop and think, wow, this is not just an isolated, minimal problem. This is a big deal.
I got a call from a priest one day. He says, you're saving many, many lives. And from that day on, it took on a really different meaning. It's not just feeding hungry people, it's saving people's lives.
Hunting for me now is just purely a sport. It's getting outdoors, getting fresh air, passing it on to friends, and as well as my son and my daughter. I've taken them both out hunting. They've both been able to harvest deer with a bow at a very young age, 5 and 6 years old. And it was a special thing for me. I'll never forget the time I killed my first deer, but it didn't compare to the time my daughter and my son both took their first deer.
As long as there's poverty, there will always be people who are hungry. But beyond the sport, beyond the prevention to crop damage, beyond the economic contributions that the hunting industry makes, harvesting venison and other wild game has its place in helping our neighbors in need. When you consider that one mature deer can help feed 200 people, farmers and hunters across the country are doing their part in bridging those gaps out of hunger and poverty.